Hello there, beautiful, and welcome back to the Dark Alchemist. I'm very excited for a reading today because I will read one of your past lives from the Akashic Records for you. The reason that I'm doing this Akashic record reading for you today is because over the last couple of months, I've gotten more and more information that this year, 2024, and the next couple of years going forward are going to be years where a lot of us are going to reconnect with past life memories. So I thought, what better way to kick this all off than by doing a reading. I've also recorded a talk about this topic. If you're curious about that, I'm going to link it up there for you and also in the pinned comment down below so you can check it out. And without further ado, let's take a deep breath in and out together to center for our reading, and then we're going to look at the three piles. So please take a deep breath in with me and out. Excellent. As you can see, we have three piles for today. Pile number one is the Six of Wands. For pile number two, we have the King of Pentacles. And for pile number three, we have the Hermit. It's a beautiful card that is very difficult to see on my background today. Let's have a look at actually it's alright, let's have a look at our crystals. For pile number one, we have this piece of citrine. For pile number two, we have this piece of moss agate. And for pile number three, we have this piece of clear quartz. So I'm going to zoom in for you in a moment and give you about a minute of meditation with some music. Take a couple more deep breaths and see which pile or maybe piles you feel most drawn to, because potentially I could read two of your past lives, you know? So let's see what comes up for you, and you will find the timestamps down below, and I'll see you in your selected pile. If you felt drawn to the beautiful Six of Wands or the citrine, welcome, welcome, welcome to your reading, my lovely pile number ones. We are going to almost straight away pull some cards. I want to look at this for a second. First of all, I inquired whether or not this was in a lifetime on Earth or off Earth, and I got the answer that this was an off Earth life. So some kind of extraterrestrial life form is what we're going to look at in your reading today. And I find it very interesting with this card. So I specifically felt drawn to this deck because all of the drawings are a bit more difficult to describe, but I feel they are more energetic than the regular Rider-Waite tarot. And I find they just work super, super well with these more open themes. So I'm not going to read them in a regular way. I'm going to read them purely intuitively, just letting you know, first and foremost, because usually when I look at this card, it looks like, you know, this is some kind of celebration, some kind of like accolades, or yeah, just some kind of celebration, like reaching kind of the pinnacle, because we have all of the wands also going to the top. And then we got the light there. And for this lifetime of yours and the energy that you had in this lifetime, or this space in general, I'm getting a polar opposite kind of message, where these ones, to me, they look like thorns, you know, they look like they have lots of thorns, and it's almost like growing or like winding its way around your arm, like trying to pull you down, while you were like just trying to get up. You were just trying to get up somehow. So I don't know more about that for now. I'm just going to leave it there. It's just the first thing that came up for me. Because also, like, of course, I'm drawn to the light, because, I mean, we have like an ascension, I guess, in this image, right? We have the dark underneath, and then we move up to the light. Wonder what the sticks are all about. Okay, let's have a look. This card represents the space, or like it's an energy reading of the space of the planet that you were in. We got the card of the new pearl. And like, again, I'm being drawn from like the darkness to the light, to that kind of motion. It's the same motion, right? We have the triangle that goes up, and we have the triangle that goes into the light as well. And it's interesting because the card of the new pearl speaks about the pearl that's forming. And how does a pearl form? A pearl forms from a single grain of sand, or like grit that's an irritation, or like an irritant inside of the oyster, and then over time, like the oyster surrounding this singular irritation forms the pearl. So I feel like maybe there was something a bit more controversial going on. Let's see. I pulled 2 more cards, and then I'm gonna channel and piece it together for you. We get the card of the cave. Interesting. And we get the card of the vow. Let me move this so we can have a look at this space. So it was a very difficult life that you lived in that particular lifetime, and it was also in a very, very dark place, like dark in terms of energy. So it was a space where there was not a lot of light and love, and it was a place, yeah, that was like drenched in shadows. And it was a place where people did not treat each other well, or I say people, but I'm not talking about people here, where energies did not treat each other well. The energies, the beings in the society did not treat each other very well. It was a space that was trying to contain themselves against the outside world. And what I mean by that is, it was an environment where the society was built up in such a tight-knit way that also, for example, trading with other planets or other nations, etc., was not something that you were doing at all. It was very, I just heard the words dictator, like kind of some kind of tyranny was going on in that society. That was the structure that it was built, and this tyranny was the very reason that this was plunged into darkness. And also this kind of darkness that was present there, the way that people were, I'm just going to say people, okay, from now on, but just know that, okay, we're talking about otherworldly beings here. It was a place where people were trying to one-up each other. It was like very hostile environment for every single one. I'm getting very much survival of the fittest almost, you know, like always trying to one-up each other to try to get just like a little bit ahead, a little bit more of the crumbs that were there. It's that kind of like survival kind of energy that I'm getting. And like with this cave, I mean, a cave can be a safe space that you go to for shelter when, let's say, you're outside and there's a huge storm going on. But I feel like this cave in this instant was more like the cave was sealed off from the inside, not because there was danger waiting on the outside. It was for control purposes. With this vow that I see here, it's almost because also this vow is also kind of, when we look at the image here, we see that the vow, like the hands are clasped together, like surrounded by this kind of darkness. It's really like, yeah, there was some tyrants ruling over these beings, like all of you. Like, let me try and phrase that, because like I'm getting some images. So let me try and translate that the best way that I can. Okay, so the reason that all of this was sealed off was because in the shadows, behind the scenes, away from the prying eyes from any other like nations, alien races, etc., who were in general more collaborative with one another, this was the birthplace of great darkness. It was a birthplace of a civilization that would later on go around the universe and try and oppress, I say try, but they also succeeded. So going into other civilizations, destroying their planets, taking what they needed, resources, very much like predatory. That's the right word. Like survival, like within the community, there was a lot of survival energy happening. And in general, like the behavior that was turned outwards was predatory. But I'm getting the sense that this, like sealing off all of the kind of entrances to generate this kind of fear energy inside of the society as well was very calculated to create a nation of soldiers. It was essentially a way to toughen you up. Hate that phrasing, by the way, but that's the phrasing that's coming through. That's the phrasing that I can like read from the rulers that were there, like a way to toughen you up from a very, very young age, to get you into the right killer mindset. And I do mean it in the way that this came out, in the right killer mindset, in order to be ruthless enough once you've grown up enough to go out and do their bidding, you know, because as you know from human life in this lifetime as well, it's very much the environment that you're first in is the very environment that later on becomes the blueprint for your life. Until, of course, there comes a point where you can question what's going on, etc. But this is very much how you're programmed, very much your conditioning. So that's the kind of conditioning that was coming through here. And that also makes sense with like the trying to escape and wanting to go to the light. Yeah, let's see. I want to look at your energy in this. Your own energy in this space. Because just because the space was like this does not necessarily mean that you were also like this, right? So let's have a look. I got them right here. Yeah. So this is a polar opposite energy. For you, we got the card of the nectar. And we got the pilgrim. Once again, do you see that there is a mountaintop, kind of the upward triangle, and someone like trying to reach Someone trying to reach the top. Oh, they say you were trying to reach the top. Not in a sense of you were trying to reach the light, but in a sense of you were trying to. This might be tough to hear. I'm gonna be honest, but we will work through that. Okay, I'm gonna be as compassionate as I can. You were trying to oppress your way to the very top of that kind of society, of that civilization, of that kind of food chain that was existing within this community, within this civilization. And you were trying to reach that because you were hoping that once you were at the top, you could take a breath, you could take a breather. It was like you were tired of the fighting to some extent, but of course you didn't tell anyone, you didn't let it show at all whatsoever, because that would not made you give you a position of a general, is what I heard. So, like you would not have, if you would have let on to anybody that you actually were kind of tired of the fighting and you wanted to have a break and you were kind of starting to question things, you would not have made it to the top. So you were basically trying to get to the top so that you could take a breather, get a bit more rest, and get a bit outside of this food chain. Or when you're on top of the food chain, then you can decide who you are, who you need to hunt down, or you can do nothing, right? The image that I'm seeing right now is the one of a shark that's hunting a seal, and it was like a while ago. I watched a video on YouTube. It was just a short clip of there was actually no, it was not a shark and a seal. It was a sea lion. Was it a sea lion? Yeah, sea lion hunting a penguin, and at some point, they were like chasing each other, and at some point they were on the same kind of chunk of ice that was floating in the ocean, and the sea lion didn't end up eating the penguin because it just we have no idea why. If I actually remember that and I find it, I'm gonna link it down below in the description box for you. Because that's what I'm seeing, it's kind of like, that's the imagery. Like you wanted to be in this position of power, not because you necessarily wanted to misuse it against others, but just because you wanted to have the choice of taking someone's life, or the choice of punching down without necessarily wanting to exert all of that power, which is interesting. An interesting contrast to this kind of predatory nature. Okay. Is there something else about this for now? Okay, I just heard you were starting to see this kind of civilization, because you see there is an eye there. You were starting to see this civilization for what it was. There was one particular mission that you were going on, where you went to a planet and you had a moment of fully seeing the kind of destruction that you were causing, like you and the civilization that you were part of. It was like there was one moment where you really saw it, and it was one act that you saw that shocked you to your core. For some reason, like you've seen it many times before, like this particular act being done, but in that one moment, something snapped inside of you, and you looked at it and you saw it, and it was like you woke up and you lifted your gaze and you looked around at the rest of the city that was there, and like all of the destruction that was caused, and you were like, this is not right. This is not right. So this nectar representation was to be in a position to come into this position of power without wanting to exerting it over others. And with this nectar, I mean, if we're looking at that kind of societal structure, the only way that you could experience some semblance of sweetness in life would be if you were at the top. So I get it. I completely get it. Yeah, okay. I pulled some cards to look at, get more detail about the place that you were in. Excuse me. Ooh. That was a big sneezer. And for you, we got the card of the Nephilim, controversial, assessing, and new perspectives. I mean, it looks like a mean giant. It looks like a mean giant. I'm gonna see if I feel called to read any of them from the guidebook for you. Let me actually place this up here. We got the pentagram, harmony, protection, idealism. We got Nagas with lovers, erotica, and sensuality. And look at the color scheme that's matching up here. And then we have, wow, okay, we get the reptilians with predator, survival, and tyrannical, which very much matches up what I already spoke of. Let me have a look for a moment at the guidebook if there's something that catches my eye. Where do I have it? Because this is kind of a new deck for me. Yeah, so for the Nephilim, we got the keywords of crude, condemnation, brute strength, controversial, and temptations. I'm really being drawn to them, temptations. I guess if you're going into other places, into new planets, and you are looking at everything they got going on and their resources, and you go into them with the intention of taking, that feels like a temptation, which brings me actually back to the Six of Wands. It's like every time that you were seeing a civilization encountering a planet, etc. So also, by the way, you were a bit nomadic. It's like you were like moving from planet to planet to planet to planet and taking all of the resources and essentially making the planets, after you left them, they were not inhabitable anymore. For the most part, some of them did recover, but like the time frame, I don't have the words to explain the kind of time frame for you that it was taking for like many billions of years. That's what we're speaking of, that planets needed to take in order to regenerate, if, like I said, if it was possible, but a few of them did recover. And because of that, you were a bit nomadic. So each time that you were moving around, and you found a place that was thriving to some degree, which brings me actually back to the like regular Six of Wands kind of energy of the success and the like accolades, which just like, I mean, also the flowers, it's like, it's a thriving environment. It's a space where the civilization and the nature, whatever it looked like on that planet, was existing in harmony and like existing in a state of balanced give and take. Each time that you encountered such a beautiful, pure space, you saw it, you wanted what they had, you went in, you uprooted all of the trees, you uprooted the whole civilization and everything else. And then when you were done and you had done the same thing to that planet as you did to others before, you decided it's time to leave. And what's interesting here with like the harmony, protection, and idealism that I see here is, with this idealism, there is no conscious of, for the most part of society, we already spoke that there was one thing that you witnessed where something was like blown wide open for you. But there was one aspect of this civilization was that there was no consciousness for the acts that you were taking. So there was no conscious that this was not right. There was no conscious that perhaps a better way, rather than having to like move all over again, would be to actually start adapting some of these habits and some of the patterns that these actually thriving societies had. You know, because honestly, it's much easier to maintain a planet than it is to destroy it, take it completely out, and then go into the wide world of the cosmos, the universe, the multiverse, to try and find another place to sustain yourself. That sounds super stressful as a life, like in general. That sounds very, very stressful. So there was no conscious of that, in a sense. Yeah, like no harmony. I'm being drawn to the spider web that's on this card. It's almost, yeah, like I mean, spiders, when spiders have some kind of prey in their net, right? They go up to their prey and it's already sticky, right? And then they I'm lacking the words for this. For this, I'm lacking the words. We're speaking about alien stuff, and I don't know how to describe a spider that's a spider that's like webbing up. That's not the right term, but we're gonna go with it. A spider that's like webbing up their prey, and then what are they doing? They're sucking it dry. Right? That's what they're doing. They're sucking it dry. That's exactly it, like the sucking it dry. You really, in that lifetime, you really destroyed several civilizations here, like sucking it dry. Like going into these pure places, sucking it dry. With the lovers, the erotica and sensuality. I wonder if, let me check in quickly, because I wonder if, yeah, something's going on with love here. Let me see what I got, what I can channel. Okay, we got some trickster energy happening here. So with this Lovers card that I see here, the sensuality with the nectar like reaching the top, and this actually connects back to that lifetime that I touched on, where, not the lifetime, but that event that I touched on, where something happened and then opened your eyes and you're like, something here is so out of whack, so out of balance. And it's connected back to this one. You were not only like going into these as a civilization, not only were you going into these spaces to try and conquer, you were going into these spaces sometimes under the guise of wanting to trade with them. So you were, that's really deceitful energy. You were going into these spaces to, you already had the full intention of taking all of their resources, destroying everything, etc. Like, taking their women, if they had women, because, you know, like reproductively speaking, we have all different ways of reproduction when we're looking outside of Earth. But some of them do have a semblance of what we got going on here. And then, of course, if you want to like crossbreed one like alien race with another, you know, it can be possible. Sometimes it's not. Different topic. Let's not go there. Also because I don't know that much about it, but just as a little sideline, it's like you were going into this one particular planet, this one particular mission, and they were really, really thriving a lot, like living in total abundance when it comes to that planet, total abundance when it comes to the way that their society was built. It was like a very, very harmonious place all around. Very harmonious place. Very much the polar opposite when it comes to energy to you. And we're going to talk about the reptilians in a second, because I thought about them before. But you were going into this space, and sometimes you were trying to figure out what kind of resources they had. You know, so you were not necessarily every single time going into a new planet with the open intention of conquering and destroying, but you were going in trying to find people to trade with. So that's why I say deceitful, because you were going in with the other intentions behind your back, but you didn't let them know. Because it's much easier to find out which kind of resources a planet has access to and what's going on there, etc., when you are first friendly to them, because they will be openly sharing with you what they have, what you can trade, etc., right? Like showing you around maybe a little bit, and particularly if it's a society that's very harmonious in general. Like they had good relationships with other races around, etc., and was like a harmonious give and take between all of them, like very balanced, helping each other out, etc. That was kind of the corner of the universe that they were living in. And yeah, it's much easier to find out their resources that way, because then you can, first of all, you get to know the structure of the society. You get to know their strengths, their weaknesses. You get to know who you need to take out in order to cause chaos. And in order to take control, right, like finding out who the right people are, and what the right timing of everything is. You even find out the schedule of everyone. If you spend enough time there for like a period of time, and I'm getting there was like a smaller, how can I phrase that? It's almost like there was like a huge kind of mothership where all of your beings were on, all of your civilization was on, or most of it. And then you had some smaller ships, and the smaller ships were sent. They looked like, to their perspective, it looked like they were like merchants coming from foreign lands. Okay, like from foreign planets, just some regular merchants, like nothing suspicious was going on there. And then you spend some time there to like rest, and some of you even damaged your spaceship on purpose in a particular way, so you had more time to scope out the scene if it was necessary. You feigned that, but you didn't just feign that, because like all of them are also advanced civilizations, like not necessarily technologically in the same way as you are, but technological advancement is just one way to advance. But you were going there to spend more time to scope out everything. During your time there, you actually fell in love with one of the beings that was living there, and you started something up with them, because it's like the energy was so warm that this person had, or this being had, was so warm, so unlike anything you've ever experienced in your entire life, that it just drew you in magnetically. You knew it was a problem, but like you couldn't help yourself, I guess. You couldn't help yourself. I think this is the one time in this lifetime that you came the closest to feeling love. Just that one time. So what happened was, when you and your little team found out all of the weaknesses of that place and all of the strengths, etc., naturally you had to go back, because the merchants, right, they trade their stuff and then they pretend that they're finished, so they leave. And so you left because you had to, right? Coming back to the society where it's like the survival aspect that's present there, and you left because you had to. You went back to the mothership, did all of your reports. A battle plan was made. Plan of conquering, however you want to call it, was made. And because you spent some time there, you knew exactly when to strike, where to strike, what to do, who to take, who not to take, and you went back with this mothership and invaded that planet. Because you were there before, and you were trying to get to the very top. You were not at the very top, but you made it quite far actually in this kind of society. Okay, you made it quite far, because they don't just let anybody into these kind of smaller merchant ships, you know, to go and make first contact. So you made it quite far, and you were trying to protect this other being. Like you were trying to make it happen, but you see, in that kind of society, you can't trust anybody. So the other beings from your civilization that went to this planet there to pose as merchants with you, even though you were careful, like they noticed, okay? They noticed this kind of connection. And they waited. Oh boy, I hate this energy so much. They waited. They went straight to this being and they waited for you. Because they were trying to teach you some kind of lesson. Like one of them actually blabbed to one of the generals, like one higher up, and they decided, because of the way that they are built, with their like tyrannical, like sadistic, crude kind of nature, they decided that this needed to be this kind of energy, like you just being capable of showcasing that kind of energy was a problem for them. It was a problem for them, so they decided to pose a bit of an example, to teach you a lesson and to teach everyone else a lesson too. You know, because to them this looked like the first sign of disloyalty. To them that was the first sign of disloyalty. So they decided to teach you an example, and I don't think I need to go into detail about what kind of events transpired, but like it's clear, like, you know, they made you watch. So I'm gonna say they made you watch. I'm really sorry. Okay. I have not talked about the reptilians yet, so I'm going to do that. It is very likely that lifetime you actually were part of the reptilians, because the kind of energy that I read in the beginning and the societal structure and what I described is reptilian kind of energy. It is, I mean, when it comes to galactic history, there are many different channelers speaking about this kind of topic, etc. And with the reptilians, no one 100% knows where they come from. There are like different scenarios of where they originated, etc. One aspect, or like one of the stories that has been told about the reptilians, is that they actually did not come here from, or they didn't originate in our universe. They were basically dumped into our universe from a different kind of multiverse, because every single universe has specific kinds of laws that are upheld by a council of the most advanced civilizations that live in that universe. And there are certain laws that you can break, there are certain laws that you can't break, you know? And in that other universe, the reptilians have, in their tyrannical and their predatory nature, broken several of these unbreakable laws. And as a result of that, their punishment was that they were thrown out into a different, like basically dumped into a different multiverse for someone else to deal with. And one of these theories is that that's how they ended up in our universe. That lifetime that I speak of was so long ago. So long ago. that I want you to know that you are not like that anymore, okay? And we're gonna take a moment and look into the soul lessons that you learned in this lifetime, because yeah, I feel like it's important. So let me actually make a bit of space now for it, I think. No, I don't have space. I'm just gonna pile everything on top today. So the first card that I have is the shark, which is very funny. Remember, I when I spoke about the image that I thought I saw, I spoke of the shark, and then I remembered it was a sail. So we got the shark here. We got the card of imagination. We got the card of compassion. Yeah. And we got the card of independence. Put that up top here. That's really interesting for me. You see, like sharks, first of all, one thing that you massively honed in this lifetime is your ability to work on pure instinct. To work on pure instinct, very, very instinctual nature of when to lay low, when to strike forward. And when I say that, you know, even though we talked about like invasion and battle scene, etc., I want to speak about the way in which this kind of soul lesson can be super useful to have in this lifetime now. With this instinctual nature, you have a very strong intuition. You developed a very strong intuition of knowing who to trust, who not to trust. You learn the aspect of timing, how important timing is when you are doing anything, when you are, wanting to ask someone out or approach someone, or when to look for a new job, when to start a new business, when to launch a new kind of product, when to do anything. Very, very strong instinctual nature coming from that particular lifetime, which is a very useful skill. Having the gift of knowing when the time is right to act now and when to lay low is so useful for every single aspect of your life. Like, that's incredible. At the same time, the shark is a representation of being able to go into great depths. It's like that particular lifetime for you has built a capacity to work with shadow energy, be in shadow energy, and understand the ins and outs of that particular kind of like predatory survival kind of energy, and how, most importantly, how a society can be structured. This is a visit. Civilization, slow down. How a civilization can be structured to create these kinds of like almost mindless soldiers, if you will, because that's kind of how it's coming through. And you gained a lot of understanding about how all of this is built up. And I wouldn't be surprised if you are either working in the field of, I'm just going to say like broadly social work, of working with people who come from harsher environments and like helping them out of that, or helping them to soften their edges, like just soften the shields that they feel like they need to put up and that they needed to put up. So any kind of work surrounding that topic. But honestly, I also see politics. I also see like politics to some degree, and like politics also, I mean, if I say politics, most of us will think about more like working in like a local government or whatever, but politics are also at play at every single group that exists. Social kind of politics. what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. You can see it in friends groups, you can see it at the workspace, you can see it amongst colleagues, bosses, boss versus, and I may say versus, but boss and employee. You see it at the playground, you know, it's everywhere. It's like a very fundamental kind of lesson that you learned in this lifetime. Because also with the imagination, it was an integral part for you to imagine a new kind of society. Because, like we said, not only did you go, like you didn't just experience that society that was this tyrannical nature, you also went into these other societies and you went there under the guise of being a merchant, meaning you got inside information of how these societies are built, etc. So you got this like balance of both of them, which enables you now to read these heavier energies, these sort of like tyrannical energies and the structures and the beginning of those structures, etc. You were able to read all of those like an open book. And at the same time, you have the capacity to know what a better way to move forward or what a better thing to build would be. So it's like, it's very, very powerful to know that with this imagination card and with the compassion. It was the beginning of you for learning your compassion. It's also because you have this experience. Oh, by the way, with the social work, you could also do some kind of work in, I'm going to say like broadly law enforcement, working around or working with people who were in prisons, are in prison, any of that sort of nature, because I very strongly feel, because you yourself experienced a change when you were in that lifetime, right? You started to soften up through this experience of love for the first time. There's a lot of compassion in yourself that you have also for people who took some couple of wrong turns, or, you know, who maybe themselves came from an environment such as this one, and then, you know, in order to survive, try and force their way through the rest of the world, which is not necessarily, you know, grounded in that kind of energy, but their mind tells them that it is to move forward. Yeah, with the independence card here. You know, sometimes if you want to learn about freedom and if you want to learn about independence, as souls, we choose to have these experiences where we are the least amount of free, where we are the most amount of bound up, caught up, wrapped up, restricted. And it's the liberation from that space. And to be honest with you, in that lifetime, when you chose to fall in love or when you chose to allow that to take place, that was your way of experiencing independence. If you are in a society where love does not exist whatsoever, an act of liberation would be to experience love. Okay. That's all that's coming through from the Akashic Records for you regarding this lifetime. I know it was a really heavy one. I didn't expect that, but also, I guess, looking at the own past lives that I had or the memories that came up for me, shouldn't be too surprised. Actually, my pile number ones, I closed the reading and I sat here in silence for 1 minute, and I got one more realization with you, so I need to interject that somehow. You know, when we look at the civilization, and in the talk that I gave, I also spoke about soul journey and how our individual soul journey ties into the collective that we're from, and each place that we incarnate, we are, for that time that we are there, part of that kind of consciousness, and we are trying to expand that kind of consciousness through our actions as well. Your role in this civilization was to open that society up, because if we're talking about an environment or civilization where love is non-existent and we only got this like survival, predatory nature, etc., the next step of evolution would be to soften those tendencies and to bring in more softness, to bring in more love. So every single one of you that watched this video and that felt drawn to this pile and that lifetime, that experience, that every single one of you went into this civilization with this kind of blueprint of being one that starts to shake things up a bit, that starts to, bit by bit, of course, slowly, starts to experience a higher emotional state, and love is a higher emotional state than what we touched on with the survival, etc. Because survival is fear, which is pretty much the lowest vibration there is. But that was your role in this lifetime, okay? You went there, as traumatic as it was, of course, naturally, we spoke about this. As traumatic as it was, that was your contribution and your role in that civilization. You were one of the first ones that were allowing a semblance of love. And let me tell you, once something like this is seeded, it can grow and grow and grow. So you were, biologically speaking, and speaking about consciousness, you were opening the door for others to experience something similar. And, through the course of evolution, like later down the line, it can even reach a point where, could reach a point where all of them are like this, but I don't think that's, even in the timeline that we find ourselves in right now, I don't think that's the case. I think that kind of nature is very much active for them. But, there can be a smaller group, there can be a subset, and, subsets can, subgroups can go, if there are enough people, can go to their own planets, can flee to their own planets, can try and escape, can build up their own new civilization, and etc., and start their own branch of evolution, if you will. So I just wanted to leave you with that one actually before I fully close the reading. So I'm going to cut back to whatever I said before. If you are experiencing some very challenging emotions at the moment and you would like some help with processing them, either today or, in the upcoming days, I'm going to leave a video down below for you where I'm guiding you through processing your feelings by EFT tapping so that you can release some of whatever came up for you now. I'm also going to create a 30-minute Reiki treatment to help you process and do energy healing surrounding all of these topics. It's going to come out a bit later this week. And I'm also going to start sharing my own past life memories this week as well. It's going to be a bit of a series, I think. So if any of those are out already, you can find them in the pinned comment down below. And honestly, if you were there in person, I would offer you the biggest hug right now because I feel like you need it. I feel like you really need it. And I would offer that to you if you like that, not everyone likes hugs. So whatever you would like. And yeah, huge learning curve. I'm curious to hear how this reading resonated with you, if at all, and what happened also in the days following after. So if you want to come back in a few days and reply or leave a comment as well, sometimes things like this, they need to cook for a bit. So that's all I have for you today. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I hope I see you soon. Bye. If you felt drawn to this wonderful Knight of Pentacles or the Moss Agate, welcome to your reading, my lovely pile number 2s. We're gonna go straight away into pulling some cards. Actually, let me tell you, when I check in with the Akashic Records, the first 2 things that I'm checking is whether this lifetime was on planet Earth or off planet, and whether you were human or non-human. And the lifetime that we're talking about today is of you being on Earth as a human. So this is speaking about a human incarnation, just as a starter to let you know. And the first card that we have is Jupiter. And I'm just going to pull a couple of cards out for you now that we're going to look at, okay? Just so you know. Because I first want to look at the environment. We're going to talk about the Knight of Pentacles a bit later as well. Don't worry about it. But we're going to first talk about the environment that you found yourself in, and then we're going to look at the kind of person that you were in that lifetime. All right. We have, to speak about the environment, we have the Queen. We have the River. And I asked for 2, but you got 3, so we'll take it. And you got the card of Thanatos. Let me make some space here so that we can look at all of them in detail for now. Let me start speaking about the Queen, since that was the first card that popped up. From, you know, like all of these 3 are one message. I wanted to say 2, but they're one message. So let me start with the Queen. I find it interesting that we have the Queen and you have the Knight of Pentacles, because this Knight of Pentacles is a representation of you in that energy and how you felt in that environment. And the Knight of Pentacles is someone who is very dependable. It's someone who has a strong goal, is very grounded, very stable in going after their goals, going after what they want, you know, a very dependable, stable kind of energy, I will say. At the same time, when it comes to having a goal, there is a certain sense of striving to create something big. You know, I mean, the Knight wants to protect a legacy. The Knight wants to protect the legacy in the original function of a Knight, and we have the Queen here. Let me check for a second to see if that's like an actual Queen and you were some kind of Knight in a court. Okay, I just heard the words no. So that was not what was happening. But with the Queen, maybe it's going to become a bit more clear as we go through the reading. With the Queen, this speaks about a leadership position, or there being a leader that has is very moody. That's what I just heard, a very moody kind of leader. And I mean, a Queen is in a position of leading either from light or from shadow. When a Queen leads from a position of light, they lead with compassion, they lead from a position of what is best for my people, what is best for me. Then we got the living in harmony with nature, creating and generating wealth for herself naturally, but also ensuring that everyone, like all of her I just heard the words peasants, all of her subjects, I think peasants is going to be a clue for us. We're going to get back to that in a second. But that all of her subjects are well cared for. You know, she is the leader of a thriving ecosystem of a society, if you will. You know, when a Queen is ruling from the shadow side, she's ruling from a space of feeling like all of her subjects are peasants, and that's how I'm going to bring that back in, leading from a position of oppressing everyone else, leading from a position as well. There's like very strong ego energy present with the Queen, of wanting to conquer, of wanting to be, for example, the most beautiful, and all of these other things. We're going to move on, and I'm going to go back to that a bit later. With the River, they're speaking about this time that you found yourself in was a time of transformation, because the River is a symbol of great transformation. It's in constant flow. It's constantly moving. And in this particular deck, the river speaks about the notion of how many rituals of change in all different cultures around the world are taking place in a river because of the flowing nature and the symbolical nature that goes with it. It speaks about entering into the river, expecting to fully engage with a new transformation, and the river basically with its currents like taking you far further than you previously thought. In combination with the Queen, it was a tumultuous time, I see. So it was a tumultuous time where there was a change in leadership of the society that you were living in. So there was a specific kind of revolution happening. So you experienced a tumultuous time where there was a great change in leadership, where let me wait a second to see what I can hear. This change in leadership was actually brought on by the people. Was a change in leadership brought on by the people, because the peasant, the peasant energy that the Queen, that they came through for the Queen or for the leader of being in a position of being a great oppressor, is what guided the people of that society to overthrow the leader and to try and install a new kind of leader. So this was the great kind of transformation, and things were not moving smoothly at all. It's like overthrowing a government. That's never a smooth process in general, naturally. Like, how can it be? But what I'm seeing here is that there was a specific kind of subgroup of people that had kind of their own plans, so it was a position of later on finding out that you replaced one cruel leader with another cruel leader. Thanatos, on the other hand, when we have here the spiderweb that you see here, speaks about finding yourself in a position of death. It's like a card of death. With the spiderweb, like getting caught up in a spider web. If you are some kind of prey, if you're a fly, for example, and you find yourself in the spider web, right, you can't move, like you're stuck in place, and you're just basically waiting for death. We're going to see how that ties into the environment. But essentially, it was a sticky situation in that society. It was this like time of change. Something needed to happen, or else the old leader would have brought all of you into I just heard the words total collapse. So your society was on the brink of collapse because of the Queen's kind of ego problems. They could also be, let me check for a second. Okay, so this leader that we're speaking of here was starting a lot of wars with other countries, is what I just heard. Started a lot of wars with other countries as well. So, there was a time where it was trying to save whatever could be salvaged from your people, or everyone would die. Like, you would just know. And it's interesting that we have this part with Jupiter, because Jupiter speaks about expansion, and it speaks also about an ego that can be too big. It speaks about expansion. It speaks about the bigness of things, and the shadow side of the bigness of things would be, for example, excess and overconsumption. In this particular guidebook, it's also speaking about the shadow side, for example, of fame. That's the word. The shadow sides of fame, where you want like everything to be bigger, broader, faster, more. And that kind of shadow side of expansion. So, we already touched on that with the Queen, but that's what we're the environment that you were dealing with, that you found yourself in. So let's have a look at you actually in this particular lifetime. Let me do it like this, yeah. And who you were in that lifetime. We got the card of the vow, which is interesting because that came out in pile number 1 as well, but I'm getting already a very different vibe for this one. We have the shaman. Like, I see all of the skulls there, and I'm being drawn back to Thanatos and the card of death. And then we got a third one, the card of Bardo. Okay, so you were part of the people that were overthrowing the leader, and you had a very interesting position in this scenario, because you actually had a shamanic energy to yourself. So you were someone who was able to see into the future. You were able to touch up on different energies, like very psychic kind of energies, what I'm getting for this lifetime from you. And with this vow, it's like this vow that you see here, or like the hands claps that you see there, is a representation of you and the people that were trying to plan this kind of overthrow, you know, like very much in secrecy, and like vowing to either live to make it through or die in the process, because that was the only way to move forward, the only way to freedom, is what you felt like, because I'm being drawn to the bird as well. And you had this shamanic qualities. And what's really interesting here is that we have the shaman and the bardo, because the bardo speaks about the liminal space. It speaks about the space between life and death, or the space between death and afterlife, if you will. It's the space where I don't know if you're familiar with the topic of earthbound spirits, for example. That would be a space where earthbound spirits find themselves. So it's someone that has died, but it's someone that has not released their attachment to this lifetime yet, and is unwilling to cross over into going back to all that is. So I guess in regular terms, that would be considered a ghost. Although I felt like ghost is not really the right kind of terminology for that, but it's kind of an imprint or a fragment of the soul of when it was alive that is still clinging to life. And you had a very strong talent to communicate with those that were in this liminal space. So you had a strong mediumship ability to be able to speak to those that have died, but again, not have crossed over fully. The interesting part about the ones that have died and haven't fully crossed over is that they are in connection actually to this leader. Remember, in the beginning I spoke that this was a very cruel kind of leader and started a lot of wars, etc. But it's also like anytime someone spoke up against that leader and was criticizing any of those things, you know, basically felt like a huge threat to this leader, and they were taken care of. They were taken care of. So you had the ability, because not all of them crossed over, some of them, for some reason, one reason or another, decided to cling to this attachment of life, even though, you know, like being a human without a body is, it's not a nice existence to be. They were clinging on, and you were able to tap into these kinds of energies. You were able to talk to them. You were able to figure out what really happened, which also honestly helped to persuade lots of other people to join you in this kind of group for this kind of coup that you were trying to run, because the kinds of information that you could deliver to this particular group were so specific, and you could also verify the information that was coming through from these people by it's like you were having just regular conversations with them. You could talk to them, and you could hear them, like very strong mediumship abilities, like I said. But you were able to verify that kind of information because you could ask them some very personal questions that were pertaining to the life that they lived, and the information was of such a personal nature that you could basically have either one of their family members or, one of their family members standing in front of you, for example, their wife or one of their kids, and you could ask them something very, very personal that earthbound spirit is. That is, you could ask them something so specific that only one of those family members would know, and you would have no way of knowing. And that was your way of verifying that kind of information to them. And you got a lot of credit, not from the leader, of course, but like very much like under, like in this like group, you got a lot of credit for the kinds of information that you could channel because of that. Massive, like huge medium. That's so cool. I did not expect that to come out this way. Side note from me. At the same time, so the kind of information that you were able to channel, because, who has the ability to put the queen into a position where she feels, or the leader feels threatened by them? It would have to be someone that has a close position, was in a closer position, some kind of advisor position to that queen. So these kinds of energies had all kinds of information about the way that, for example, their stronghold or, their castle or whatever they had was built. So, you had some of the builders where she was not satisfied. I say she only because it's a card of the queen, but it doesn't, like, it's not necessarily a feminine energy that I'm picking up on. Feels neutral. But I'm just going to run with it, okay? Because she was unsatisfied with the way that certain things were built. So, she was very, very quick to behead people. Just going to say what it is. She was very quick to behead people, and, you had access to that. So you were able to basically draw up the building plans through some kind of automatic writing, where you were temporarily lending your body, your vessel, to those kinds of earthbound spirits, which also took a toll on you, but we're going to speak about that one in a moment. But you were able to lend your body to them, and then basically, them overtaking your body for a moment and like drawing, and they were like massively undermining that kind of leader energy from the in-between state a lot. So and it's like you started to do some smaller coups because they needed to figure out whether your information could be trusted or not. It's they were equally admiring you and fearing you at the same time because of the kind of power that you had, which, if you're working with people who want to overthrow a system and are trying to go behind someone's back, is not necessarily the best position to be in. Because, who's to say that you can really trust them? And something happened along those lines as well that we're gonna get into in a moment. Let me pull a couple more cards, because for now I feel like for now we're good. I pulled a couple more cards to describe this lifetime of yours. The first card that we have is the Grace, I wanted to say ultimatum, but it says utilitarian. But we're also going to take ultimatum because I heard that we have organized and intimidating, which, by the way, just because the Grays are on there, that is, like, I don't get any kind of extraterrestrial vibes from the reading. Like I said, like human life, human incarnation, human society. But we're going to take the ultimatum for in a second. We got release the petals. transformation, death and rebirth, shedding and all change. We have the card of prosperity. That's so interesting. And then we have, I asked for 1 and I got 2. We got 6 of Cups in reverse. And we got this paired with the 5 of Cups. Okay, I'm just gonna place these 2 here for now. Okay. Yeah, people were very intimidated by your power, and it's interesting because I feel like up until this point of the dissatisfaction with the way that things were running was growing too big, up until that point, you did not reveal that kind of gift. You kept it very much on the down low, and then when it was needed, you were bringing it forth, or you were bringing it to people's attention. So you're like, hey, actually, like this person came to me and connected with me, and I think we can work in this way and we can do something here, and that can be our leg up. Because like honestly, without you and that particular lifetime, none of the attempts to try and change that kind of leader would have been successful. Okay, that's how significant your role in that particular constellation was. Without you, no coup would have happened, because they would not have had the knowledge of all of the like secret ways into the stronghold, all of the weak points, etc. Even just going down to the routine of that particular leader, so that you are able to find them at the right space at the right time with the least amount of guards surrounding them, etc. It's like very, very, very strong insider knowledge that you could bring. So people were intimidated by you. With this ultimatum that I was reading, it was an ultimatum that was given to you, actually. There was a moment in time where you, because listen, like these earthbound spirits, they are in the in-between state, but they are in a position where they're able to see everything, go everywhere, and pick up on everything. So basically, you could have, or you had a bit of an army of spies in the unseen, if you will, So one of them was someone you actually knew very well when they were alive. It was kind of I guess a bit of a colleague to you, with the kind of job that you were doing there, the environment. It was just like it was like a friendly energy from that kind of, from that spirit. And I'm getting the sense right now that there were so many earthbound spirits around, particularly that the queen out of her like her ego trips of like being dissatisfied and like beheading a lot of people. There were so many earthbound spirits around, because that kind of queen, when she decided to behead someone, she refused them the right of a funeral or any kind of like death ritual. She did not allow that. And that's really cruel, but not bad. And it's really cruel. And one way that these kind of earthbound spirits can cross over into the afterlife, or going back to all that is, etc., the space in between incarnations, if you will, is during a funeral. That's how they can cross over. And if that's not given, there are like other energies at play when it comes to these kinds of topics of helping them cross over. For example, you, with the kind of power that you had, when you're able to connect, and when you are a medium and you're able to connect to these kinds of spirits, you can also learn how to help them cross over, right? That's not... I have to laugh a bit here because that's a topic that's... I don't speak about that topic on my channel, but that's kind of something that I can do. So I'm laughing because that kind of knowledge wants to come out now in this way. So that's kind of funny to me. But you know, like you can help them cross over, but essentially, because also there was like a strong fear surrounding these kinds of gifts that you had. It was not something that people were practicing out in the open, and if they were venturing into those topics at all, it was very much behind the scenes and behind the curtains. So it was not something that anyone would have wanted to talk about. But that's the reason why there were so many earthbound spirits around, because the queen denied all of the regular rituals that the society that you were in had surrounding death. So people didn't really have that kind of ritual to go to to connect with the white light that helps them cross over. Like, a long story short. Because we don't need to get into that a lot more, but just so you know, that's the reason for it. With the ultimatum that I see here, it's an ultimatum that was actually given to you. You got into a position in this particular group where, like I said, there was one of these earthbound spirits that hadn't crossed over yet, that was quite friendly towards you in general, like also when they're alive, you know, like a kind of, like I said, some kind of colleague, like friendly vibes between you and them. And they gave you some information about the kind of group that you were working with at the time. And they gave you some kind of information about a second group that was, you know, trying to like I said, what happened in the end of like bringing a different kind of leader into this leadership position, you know, like a subgroup that was working on a different goal behind the scenes. And you got fed this kind of information, and you were essentially given an ultimatum of either you work with them and you lend your gifts, or you, because your family was still actually alive, like your family was doing well. I'm getting that you were a man in that lifetime, and your family, like you were married, you had kids, like everyone was quite well. So there was like an ultimatum put on you, like either you help us or all of them will suffer immediately. And with this, like, release the petals, transformation, death and rebirth, shedding all change. I'm getting the sense that this ultimatum put you in a position where you had to make some tough choices, right? I mean, either you do something that's would be morally more up to the way that you were thinking about things, because, you know, you wanted that leader out, but you didn't want it, the new leader that they wanted to be put into place, because you're like, okay, that's, I mean, hopefully they're better, but they're, you know, there's no guarantee, and you kind of knew them, and it's like, okay, but they're also not going to be the best one either, right? So it's kind of overthrowing the old kind of government in order to create something that would be for most people equally challenging, with the only difference that you were going to come out on top with the prosperity here, right? That was kind of the promise that was given, that everything would be different, this like death and rebirth, you know, removing the old leader, bringing in the new leader, like everything would change, and that you would receive, like you would be compensated very, very, very fairly for it. The decision that you made was due to your family. You decided that you wanted to keep continuing feeding them the information, even though you were more wary of that group now, but you knew if you played along and you delivered the right kind of information, that crew would be successful, because with your mediumship qualities as well, you had some ability to look into the future a little bit. It was not your like clairvoyance in that sense, was not your strongest psychic sense, but you were able to tap into different kinds of possible timelines in the future. So you decided to go that route, and you actually did gain a lot of prosperity for going through with that kind of work. A huge portion of this society was not better off afterwards, and there were huge losses along the way, but you were favored because of the kind of work that you were doing. But like I said, you were also feared. And because you were feared, that kind of group decided that you were actually a bit too powerful to be, how can I phrase that? It's like I'm getting a feeling, and it's difficult to translate that. Give me a moment. It's like through working with them together, they've gotten such a good insight into your actual gifts and talents, and because of the way that you were able to use that to help them be successful in overthrowing, they developed some kind of paranoia that you might do the same to them, particularly because they threatened you already, and at the same time, these were not really trustworthy people when they're trying to overthrow the old government. So, they didn't really, like, even the group themselves, like, amongst each other, there was a lot of distrust. And as their power grew in this new kind of environment, this new kind of, like, social structure, they kind of started to develop the same kind of qualities that the old leader had, of being cruel, of being massively ego-driven, of falling into the shadow sides of this kind of expansion, of wanting everything to be bigger, of wanting more, etc. They were falling into the same kind of category, and they had a lot of fear for you. And you, when you started to work with them, you were actually coming from this very idealistic place of wanting to help build a new and better society for all. For all is the key word here. That was your motivation. It was only like you almost felt betrayed by them later on and going forward. And with the Six of Cups here that we see going on, it's like you were expecting an equal sharing of these flowers. It's like abundance for all. I mean, yes, maybe a little bit more for me and for the group, but overall you were hoping for an improvement, but that improvement did not take place at all. Not only that, but you were, like, your psychic gifts in that lifetime were a bit out of control, to be honest with you. It was a lifetime where, like, by going through with this coup, etc., you opened your psychic senses up so much by, like, continuously connecting to all of these earthbound spirits as well, that some of them attached themselves to you, which was really, really difficult for you. It was really draining your energy because, I mean, there are different ways that earthbound spirits can exist and move forward in life, but a lot of them are, I mean, they're not really happy, they're humans without a body. It's not and like, the liminal space is not the friendliest space to exist in. Let me just put it like this. So they came at you with lots of fear. They came at you with lots of confusion about what happened, and like, why are you the only one that can see them? Why can't the others see them? Like, what's going on? Where are they? Like, lots of confusion and all of these kinds of feelings. They were coming to you with those kinds of feelings, and you hadn't learned proper protection against those kinds of energies, or like psychic protection in general. It was not something that you really knew about, was not really something that was taught, because, like I said, those kinds of gifts were not accepted in that kind of society, and people didn't speak about it, so you also didn't really have anyone to turn to. So there was some attachments were happening where they were starting to feed off of your energy in order to sustain themselves. And it's essentially like in order to feed their attachment to life, they need to feed on some kind of energy, or they can attach themselves to specific kinds of energy when you're open to that. And because of the amount of fear that you are now living in, because you didn't know, like you didn't know how far this group would go when it came to you and your family, right? Because they threatened you once already. You did what they wanted, but what was the next thing that they were going to ask of you? You were living also now in a state of fear. So while from the outset with the prosperity, it looked like you were better off, you actually were not better off at the end. And that kind of fear allowed these kind of energies to attach to you, and it changed your state drastically, where you were starting to feel very, very depressed. You got intense like night terrors, and you were essentially like devolving into the state of this Five of Cups. And when we look at this image, this is the perfect description of what this felt like with all of these attachments on you. You felt so heavy and so sad and depressed. And I feel like you carried a lot of regret from that lifetime as well. Like you experienced regret for opening that up in the first place, opening it up so wide in the way that you did. Just the actions that were leading up until that particular time. Like that's like finding yourself in that position overall. Okay. Let's have a look at the life or the soul lessons that you learned in that lifetime, and let me clear up a little bit of space, because it's like really messy in here right now and I don't like it. So the first card that we have is the snake, which is interesting. The snake is a guardianship, or like it's not a guardianship, but the snake is a guardian of potential. And like I have a feeling that you may have locked parts of your abilities, particularly your mediumship ability. You may have locked that somewhere deep in a vault of your soul after that lifetime. And if you're someone who's trying to reconnect with your psychic powers again in this lifetime, that would be something that needs to be addressed. That would be something that needs to be looked at. Also in regards to the attachment, it just like this topic needs to be, would need to be looked at in one way or another to investigate, and also to release the like emotional turmoil, like all of the regret, like the fear of opening up again and becoming overwhelmed by what happened, becoming overwhelmed that maybe the people surrounding you are reacting with fear to that, and that it's not safe for you to open up in that way. All of these things can be, or like we can carry these kinds of imprints from one lifetime to like in all the other lifetimes that we live, and they can impact the way in which we can access our soul gifts, because this kind of mediumship quality that I picked up on definitely is one of your soul gifts. So if that's not something that you're experiencing, or if it's not something that you know how to connect but you would like to, that's the keyword here. It's a choice. You don't have to if you don't want to. But if you wanted to, that would be something like a direction to go in to resolve, these kinds of ties there. Can we have the card of assertiveness? I just heard like follow your heart, because there was a moment when you were picking up on like that group not being necessarily the best one. Assertiveness. It was also like asserting your psychic gifts, asserting yourself in a society that did not put that much value on psychic abilities, or like in the validity of psychic abilities, let me put it like that. You learned how to be assertive by providing the right kind of information that could verify that you were actually tapping into these energies like for real. You've got you are enough. This is really interesting because this is a soul lesson that you did not learn by going through feeling like you're not good enough yourself. It was a soul lesson that you learned through observation. You learned by observing all of these leaders who had everything that anyone could ever ask for, and the power position to create anything that anyone would ever want. And you saw how they were still struggling. You saw how they were still feeling empty inside and trying to fill that void from the outside in. So just by observing that, and by observing also the group dynamic, or the group that came to power changing and feeling more like that themselves, you learned how material wealth, while naturally it can be an important part, and is to a certain extent an important part of human life, right? You want to have all of your needs met, and you want to be able to go on vacation, etc. Like all of these little things extra on top. But there comes a point where material wealth, or like accumulating more, is not necessarily helpful and conducive to feeling happy or good, right? There's this line, I think there's like an actual term for it, but I don't remember it right now. There's this kind of income threshold for it, but you know what I mean. So that was something that you learned through observation. We have energy. Look at the image. I always have to laugh a bit when I look at the image, because this kind of bird creature that we see here in the tree always looks like, just look at the eyes. Looks like it never sleeps, ever. Looks like it drank 20 espressos in a row and then took a bunch of other substances to try and stay awake for the next 20 years in one go without sleeping. That's what this energy looks like. And it's really interesting because we were speaking a lot about the earthbound spirits and the energy imprints that can stay after someone has passed by clinging to life. Energy is clinging to life. You learned a lot about this kind of energy attachments. You also learned a lot about the bardo, the liminal space, and also like life and death from connecting with these spirits. But you also learned how powerful your own energy was, or is, when it comes to connecting with them, right? So that was the soul lesson, to learn about that kind of side of psychic powers, and also actually what would happen if you don't put up a lot of protection, if you don't really know what you're doing with this. You can just collect a lot of energies along the way. If you allow everyone in your energy space, and there's a difference between being able to read energies and being fully open to them attaching themselves to you. These are two different pairs of shoes. I digress for now. We got the card of regrets. You see, we got like the heart space connected twice. We got it here and we got it here with the regrets. I feel like reading the card to you. So, contentment can be hijacked by remorse for mistakes made, past circumstances, or a general feeling of overwhelm from responsibilities. So sorry about that. Be kinder to yourself, as this will provide a sense of balance. Seek out healthy ways to keep your heart open, as we all need and deserve love. Yeah, coming back to this Five of Cups energy, I already spoke about feeling regretful for the decisions that you've made or the actions that you've taken in this lifetime. And that was one of the soul lessons that you wanted to experience. What does regret feel like? And like we spoke about this, in this lifetime, you were a significant player in this kind of change in government. And I feel like this, be kinder to yourself, as this will provide a sense of balance. Seek out healthy ways to keep your heart open, as we all need and deserve love, is ultimately the very thing that I would like to use as a bit of a closing message to this reading, because I really feel like from these emotions, this like emotional turmoil. I already touched on this in the reading, that still somehow lingers with your energy to this day, even if you're not consciously aware of it. Subconsciously, there are still some ties to that kind of time. So in order for you to reconnect to that psychic gifts, like I said, if you choose to, you don't have to. It's a choice. With the snake and the guardian of the potential, this is what it is. You have the potential to connect in a big way in this lifetime as well. Maybe not to overthrow governments, maybe just to help other people or help earthbound spirits clean up the vibration of Earth in this way by helping all of these fear-filled kind of out-of-body energies to cross over, which I think is like a topic all on its own that I'm not going to touch on more in our pick a card today. But maybe that's part of your soul mission in this lifetime. I say maybe because this reading wasn't about that, and it would be like its own reading to go into that individually for each and every one of you, to look into the ties and how this comes in, because afterwards each of you went into different lifetimes having different kinds of experiences, etc. But the energy of this kind of potential of that psychic control and that psychic gift is within you, but it's guarded at the moment, it's not out in the open. So in order to access that would be to go through resolving the emotions, resolving the ties, understanding more what happened when it comes to the attachments. Are they still there? Are they not there? What's going on there, etc. Because we can also carry energies from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime with us if there is some kind of energy imprint, some kind of unfinished business, etc. And if I say that and I speak about the topic of attachments, I know people get really scared. Understandably so, but you don't actually have to be scared of them. It's like people like to visualize that as if there was a black cloud following them everywhere they go, and that's not necessarily the case. Okay, for most of us, it's a bit different. It is, however, I will say, an energy that can impact the way that you are thinking. It can impact your mood. It can impact how much energy you have overall when you're moving through life, as well. And particularly if you are coming into a new lifetime with an already existing attachment, it is there from the moment that you were born. It is just one part of yourself. You wouldn't even recognize it as a particular kind of attachment because it's all you've known in this lifetime. It's like I said, like a whole nother topic all on its own. But that's what I would do. I would check in with all of that. I would start with the emotions. I would start with the emotions. If you are feeling quite emotional after this reading, by the way, I did leave a video link down below for you for an EFT tapping video where I help you process emotions, so you can already use that resource. And I'm also going to provide a Reiki healing geared towards the past lives, but also geared towards what's it called? I can't speak anymore. Geared towards soothing this kind of emotional pain that goes alongside with it. I will say though, if along the way you do find out something more and deeper about attachments, because like I said, I feel like that's something that as a keyword, I need to drop it here, it might be relevant for some of you. That's not something that I can address in like a Reiki video that I upload on YouTube. But it is like I use Reiki to help them cross over. Let me just say it like that. So if that is you and at some point you would like some assistance with that, you can just send me an email and we can see what we can do. All right. Anyway, but these are the resources coming your way, and I will also share one lifetime in the next coming months, I don't really know, I don't really have a full schedule for all of that yet, where I'm going to share one of my own past life memories that came up, because I also had an attachment from a past life. So, and like I said, like for me, it was nothing scary at all. But I'm going to share that story, but I have a couple that I need to share first, so I don't really know where they fall in the whole lineup of lifetimes that I want to talk about. All right, so my beautiful pile number 2s, that is it. It was a very interesting lifetime, I will say, very unexpected. I mean, all of these are kind of unexpected, to be honest with you. I love doing readings like this. I think I want to do more along these lines. So do let me know how this resonated with you in the comments down below and how you enjoyed that or liked that. And I hope I see you soon again. Bye. If you felt drawn to the Hermit and the clear quartz, welcome to your reading, my beautiful pile number 3s. And let me first off say, I like to check in when I pull the cards to get some information whether or not this is an on-planet or off-planet life. And the message that I heard for you is that we're going to talk about one of your off-planet lives. So like one of your off-Earth planet, I should say. One of your off-Earth planet lives. So we're speaking about one incarnation as some kind of extraterrestrial. So we will see how that ties in. And when I pulled this card, I already heard the word like wisdom keeper. So you were some kind of wisdom keeper, and we're going to see how that ties in. First, we're going to have a look at the civilization or the environment that you were in, and then we're going to have a look at who you were in this environment. So let me pull some cards. The first 2 I have, one message, by the way, is the card of the Golden Rose. And this is supported by the card of Sulfur. And then we have the card of the Thread. And we have the card of the Healer. You were in a position of guidance. You were in a position of guidance in this past life. At the moment, I'm not 100% clear whether your entire collective and the planet that you were living on, if all of you, or like if the level of evolution that you reached was a state where you were guiding others, or if that was just you in particular. We're going to see going forward. But the environment that you were in itself was an environment where, let me check for a second. Okay, wow, that's really okay. let me tell you. You were part of a soul group or soul collective on this planet, and you were in a position of ascending to the next level of evolution, the next level of consciousness. And you were on the way, like it was basically you were almost there. We see the red thread here, like following the red thread, like through the darkness into this rainbow here, like that's a representation of coming into this state of enlightenment or coming into, like a higher state of consciousness in general. With the Healer, that card is actually self-explanatory. Like you were, like the environment that you were in and the other beings that were part of your collective are healers. All of you are healers. The Golden Rose speaks about a mystery, and it speaks about how, like all of the petals of the rose are like in a spiral, in a motion of the spiral are taking you deeper and deeper and deeper into the center, and you can't ever really see the center. And it speaks about a mystery that's supposed to stay a mystery. And Sulfur I find super interesting in this constellation because sulfur speaks also about being healing in the sense of if you're going to what's the English word for that one? If you're going to a bathhouse and they have some kind of mineral baths there, that can be very beneficial to your skin, to your body. Has some specific kinds of healing qualities, but it's about the level of sulfur that's in it. It's about finding the right amount of sulfur to generate these kind of healing benefits. But if it's too much, it's going to turn sideways and it's going to be detrimental. And if it's not enough, you don't get the healing effect. So it's about this kind of balance, and that this is kind of the mystery that you were working on in this kind of soul collective, is to find out what is just right. What's the right balance of light? What's the right balance of dark? What can we allow? What can we not allow? What is and I'm seeing like the image that I'm seeing right now to describe the kind of work that this soul collective was doing is kind of like a mechanic that's working on a car and like screwing one screw like just like a teeny bit further and seeing what works, and like unscrewing another one a tiny little bit. It's kind of like a well-oiled machine that is adjusted so that it can function in its optimum state. That's the kind of image that I'm getting for the kind of collective that you were in, and the kind of state of evolution that you were in. And I find it really interesting because, when we think about healing as well, or moving into a new state of consciousness, whatever level we're operating at, doesn't really matter. Whichever dimension we find ourselves in, doesn't really matter. Healing itself is very much like adjusting all of the little screws of the machine to make sure that it runs smoothly again. It's finding the one that's screwed a little bit too tight. It's finding the one that's screwed a little bit too loose. It's finding the spot where you need to apply a little bit more oil so that everything can function. And sometimes you need to replace a couple of parts. A machine has wear and tear from being worked, or like from working, and it's very much a similar kind of imagery that I'm getting for that kind of collective. It's looking into all of the like darker spaces. I will say that's kind of the screw that's screwed too loose, the screw that's screwed too tight. Which kind of things do we need to replace? And it's very much that stage of their evolution when you were incarnated there, where basically it was like a huge time of transformation, huge time of healing, where everything was up on the chopping block. Everything was looked at. That's super interesting. I love that. Okay, let's have a look at your energy in this. Let me move this over here for a moment. Yeah. So your energy in this. We get the card of the ring, which is interesting because the ring speaks about the promise. And then we have the king, the ruler energy. And I want to put this up here because there is such a contrast between the thread and the king energy. Let me take a second and see what I can channel from the Akashic Records about this. You actually were in a leadership position in this particular soul collective, in this particular society. You were in a leadership position, and you were actually, while you were there, like you did not incarnate in that soul collective as a leader. You were made a leader. You were kind of elected as a leader. the hierarchical structure of that kind of society was very different than when we look into human history and we have a king. There's like a huge discrepancy between the king and the subjects. But for you, that kind of, in that civilization, it was like the margin between was not that huge, because everyone in that society still had a very strong say. It was just based on, because of the time that you were in, based on the kind of chemical healing that you were able to do, that you were able to investigate, and the kind of knowledge that you had from previous lifetimes that you've lived, where you have done a lot of shadow work previously to that, like going into pretty dark spaces, going into darker collectives, and understanding a lot about shadow energy in general. With this ring and this promise, it's when I pulled this card, I heard it was the promises you made. So, and when we look at this card, you see that there is the like infinite space in between. When we look at the ring, it's like based on the soul history that you had prior to this kind of incarnation, you felt confident making specific kinds of promises to this collective that you were a part of helping them ascend to this kind of rainbow stage. And because of the kind of knowledge that you had to back up your promises, you were essentially elected the king, or you were elected into a leadership position. But I'm getting that there was like more than one king. It's almost like I just heard the word 4. Let me see what I can gather about that. Like 4 kings. Okay, so king is not the right kind of word. Like they would never use the word king, but for the sake of human language, we're going to stick with king. Because like I said, the hierarchical structure is too different. Intuition, soul technology, shadow work, diplomacy. What did I just say? Wait, that was channeled. Intuition. Did I say soul technician? Intuition, soul technician, shadow work, and what's the last one? Oh, you're screaming at me through the screen right now, because for you, I just said it. Okay, I'm gonna continue, and hopefully it's gonna come back to me. But these 4 subjects that I just spoke of are the 4 kingship positions, if you will. It's basically 4 souls that were absolute experts in each of these respective subjects, had like exceptional kind of knowledge in these 4 subjects, were elected as these kinds of kings because of the kind of knowledge that they had, the kinds of promises that would bring to the collective for this ascension process. Which one were you? Shadow work. Okay, so you were and are an expert when it comes to the shadow work. That was your position in that lifetime. Let me pull a couple more cards, because I feel like I'm not getting the full picture when it comes to this lifetime. Okay, 1 second. I need to go into this Hermit card for a moment because of the light that's present here, because I'm also being drawn to the light that emanates of the king, but you also see that there is shadow, but it's kind of contained. It's really interesting. you had control, like you had control over your shadow in the sense of you understood it and you developed the ability to allow it to be there without interfering with your light work. Does that make sense to you? If I'm bringing it into more tangible terms, it's you recognizing how much your fear of change can interfere with you taking positive actions for the collective, but you were in full awareness of that, and because you were in awareness of that, it was not something that was affecting the way in which you are moving, and it did not affect the actions that you were taking. You were able to take actions regardless. Let me look at a couple more cards. We have the card of Nagas, Lovers, Erotica, and Sensuality. This came out in pile 1 as well, but let's see how that ties in. We have the card of the Anunnaki, Controlling Drama, Conflict of Interest. We have the air element, Philosophy, Discrimination, and Empathy. We have the Merkaba, Movement, Long Distance Travel, and Excitement. And then this was at the bottom of the deck, but I wanted to take it anyway. Syrians A, Artistic Integrity and Honesty. I need to change my battery. I'll be right back with you. What I find interesting is that we have, much like we have like the shadow and the light, we have a contrast in the story that's presented here. I'm going to start with the Anunnaki and the Syrians. So Syrians was the energy that was underneath the deck, and I'm going to read this from the guidebook for you, just so, because I don't know where you're at in terms of knowledge about like off-planet stuff and any kind of channeled information about any of these other like alien races. So, take what resonates and leave the rest. The Syrian A beings come from the brilliant and brightest star in our skies, Sirius, the dog star, which is in the Canis Major binary system, possibly trinary 9 light years from Earth. The planet's name originated from ancient Greek, Sirius, for scorcher, and is mentioned in Surah chapter 53 of the Quran, titled The Mighty Star and Lord of Sirius. Ancient Egyptian goddess Sopdet and later Isis was queen of Sirius. Greek goddess Sothis was also of Sirius. The six-dimensional Syrian beings are benevolent, loyal spiritual warriors who bear service to others. They are disciplined, reserved, and have self-mastery of healthy detachment, connection to all, and integrity. They have strong ties with Mother Earth's oceanic realm. They're calm, non-political, watery, and non-confrontational, yet they can defend themselves if need be. They value honesty and transparency and prefer symbols to words. They are lovers of music, sacred geometry, and singing. The Syrian A beings, like the avian blue beings, live within the Ra law of one principles and practices. Syrian A beings visited Earth during ancient seeding projects and later worked with Egyptian, Sumerian, Inca, Mayan, and other civilizations. Ancient Mayan legends say that the Syrian A beings were the keepers of the 13 crystal skulls. The Syrian A beings were also involved in ancient cosmic wars with the Orion Alpha Draconian Empire. Cetacean, dolphin, whale, mermaid heritage originates from Sirius A. The Syrian A beings are a complex hybrid collection of species, though usually stand 6 to 7 feet tall. They have a vast array of skin colors, from brown to very dark complexions to gray-bluish tones. Many have large, protruding brains on the upper back of their skulls. The amphibian genotype of Syrian A beings have webbed toes and fingers and a diversity of aquatic features. Card meaning: artistic, music, integrity, honesty, truth, gracious, serious, transparency, ocean creatures, merchant, traders, crystals, singing, accomplishment, success, commitment, and loyalty. And the reversed side is disloyal, repressed emotions, non-committed, concealing, commitment phobic, aloof, and indifferent. And with the sacred geometry, I'm gonna for a second jump ahead to the Merkaba, because the Merkaba is, I mean, we know it from Jewish tradition, but it is a vehicle of light. It's a vehicle of these tetrahedrons that are intertwined together and that spin very, very fast, so that it looks like a vehicle of light and can be used as transportation. In the guidebook as well, it speaks about some ancient, very advanced alien races that are able to use this kind of consciousness technology in order to travel through space. So they don't even need a specific vehicle, because they kind of have, they have this vehicle of pure light that's connected to their consciousness, like interwoven with their consciousness, like very, very advanced kind of an energy. And I find it interesting that we have the Syrians here and we speak about repressed emotions, because we also have the Anunnaki. And I'm not going to go into great detail about the about the Anunnaki, but what I will say is that there was a period of time where the Anunnaki were present on Earth. There was a time when there were many different alien races coming to Earth in order to do all different kinds of projects. Some of them were helping humans along, and some of them not so much, but in general, like bringing advanced kind of knowledge to human society, we can say that as a baseline. And the Anunnaki had a hybrid race, or they created a hybrid race that was basically on Earth working for them. They were controlling them to work for them. And at a certain point, that kind of repressed and oppressed kind of hybrid race was standing up against the Anunnaki and, kind of overthrowing this like ownership, if you will. So we have the repressed emotions that we already spoke of that are like coming up on the chopping block to be healed, and we have this repressed sense of control. Let me take a second and see what comes through. Oh, okay. So, two things here. Number one, with this Lovers, Erotica, and Sensuality card, this is a descriptor of the shadow that was very present in the kind of soul collective that you were a part of. That was, that was the very thing that was transmuted, was that love was used as a manipulation tactic. It was basically taking advantage of the chemical balance of the body, because the kind of soul collective that you were a part of, you had bodies, like you had physical bodies. So there was like, and you were not like of biological matter somehow. That's not getting more descriptive than that, but that's fine. So you were using the kind of like understanding how to use love as manipulation, and like, how can I phrase that? Oh, it's so difficult to speak about this. You knew how to generate a specific kind of chemical reaction inside the bodies of, yourself, your collective, the beings from your collective, but also from others, Because remember, we spoke about the kind of multi-species nation, which would then mean, like some kind of crossbreeding would have taken place for it to be a multi-species nation. To be able to manipulate others through invoking that kind of chemical balance, very, very fine understanding for that, but using that in order to oppress and in order to also discriminate. It was like, there's no other way of saying that, but the way in which you were able to like physically interact with other species and, like partnering up, etc., that whole deal, you're essentially making others addicted to that kind of love energy that you were bringing out in it. And like, not just that you were bringing out, it was very calculated, the way in which you were using. It's so difficult to speak about this. I'm so sorry. It's like the way in which you were able to invoke these kind of chemical balances or these kind of chemical reactions that felt like love to the ones on the receiving end, felt like made them addicted to you, because you like consistently were able to generate that kind of chemical reaction in their bodies, and that kind of almost like trauma bonded them to you. Almost. I'm not saying that you didn't necessarily treat them badly, but you were driven by this idealism of creating a specific kind of civilization that had many different species like crossbreeding into, and you specifically went into these other species to find whoever you wanted to take into this kind of crossbreeding process or this kind of crossbreeding program back to your planet. And you achieved that by using that kind of like chemical energy work. I'm just gonna, this kind of chemical energy sex work, I guess. Reproductive work. Yeah. That was the shadow. That is very different from what I expected, but that's the shadow that I can see. That was something that was happening. There came a time where the ones that you brought into your nation for these kinds of purposes, once they started to be around you a bit more and more, and not just like you as a being there, but the civilization as a whole, we're starting to see some patterns surrounding that. And the next evolution for you would be to transcend that kind of control over others, because it has kind of a discriminatory factor to it of like using this kind of control. It's not that they were standing up to fight you in any way, shape, or form. It's not about that at all, because you were treating them well. It was about like a collective working through that kind of shadow energy, and why, if you truly believed in your loving energy and in your qualities, etc., as a whole, why did you need to resort to those kind of methods in order to bring other species in for kind of crossbreeding purposes, in order to create a hybrid super civilization? Because that's kind of what you were going for. It's that kind of shadow that needed to be looked at. So you were working on the topics of love, and that's why your shadow work in particular was very useful to come into play, because it was driven by fear. That kind of behavior was driven by fear. So you were a fear alchemist, if you will, that was able to do a lot of work surrounding this. And with the air element here, this kind of fear energy was playing out in the mind. There was like a fear energy playing out in the mind of that kind of nation, of that kind of civilization. Yeah, that behavior was driven by fear, and that fear was generated in the mind. What else? Prior to prior to you coming there into that kind of civilization with the knowledge that you had, it's like you were a huge instigator when it came to creating this kind of change, because prior to you as a soul arriving there, having been through like places that were heavily operating from fear and seeing also other places where fear was not as prevalent, they didn't know that this was wrong, so there was no awareness that this was, because we have the philosophy here as well, there was no awareness that this was problematic, I will say. And you opened their eyes. That was why you were put into this kingship, into this leadership position, by the way. You opened their eyes to a different philosophy, to another way of being, to another way of creating. And by the way, I'm noticing only now that we have also in the Syrian card, I didn't even see that before, because that's kind of a newer deck for me. We have the Merkaba there as well, you see that? So we have the Merkaba twice. Coming into a position of personal power, where the mind was no longer like rooted in fear, there was more of a grounded energy, and you brought a lot of movement into this kind of society, to be honest with you, because you started to help them prepare new or like develop new philosophies when it came to love and relationships, and inviting others in as equals when it came to creating something new. So that was like a revolutionary aspect that you were like a key factor for. That's really, really interesting. Now I'm being brought back to the excitement. I'm smiling now because it's like the perspective that you brought to this collective allowed them to actually be excited about all of these kind of reproductive topics, if you will, because it became fun. It became fun is all I can say about that. It became a really fun process for everyone involved. Yeah, that's all I can say about that one. But I do have a couple of cards to look at your soul mission, at the soul lesson that you learned within this. So the first card that I have is the lizard. And then we have liberate. Yeah. We have harmony. We have survival. And like on the air element as well. And I have like one more that I'm going to pull at the end of your reading because I feel called to, which I didn't do for the others. But with the lizard is someone who is, as an energy in this deck, is an energy that is very, very sensitive. It's very, very sensitive to the subtle energy. So it has a lot of, how can I phrase that? Very psychic. Like psychically very, very inclined, very sensitive to the environment that they are in. I mean, if you think about it as well, lizards are animals that are cold-blooded. So if their environment is warm, they can really, they kind of wake up, they thaw. They their bodies kind of thaw again, and they can get to moving, they can get to creating. But if the environment is too cold, it becomes difficult for them to move, and to just do things in general. And I feel like that was a huge soul lesson that you learned while you were in this environment. Because I mean, when we look at this soul collective moving from manipulation through invoking feelings of love in others, which is a very kind of cold, calculated process to experience the kind of excitement of coming together as equals and creating love together with others of like, you know, their own free will, etc. It is kind of this analogy of the winter going away and moving immediately into not spring, but immediately into the full abundance of summer. So the emotional environment of that collective, like that one of your soul lessons was to learn how to emotionally warm up an entire collective, an entire society, an entire civilization. To change the core temperature of an emotional environment for the better. Huge soul lesson there. At the same time, because I said that they were experiencing more excitement and, you know, more love, etc., their relationship, not just with other species that they wanted to bring in to create bigger civilization, not only did their relationship with others change, but also with themselves, because they were experiencing their bodies and themselves in a very different way. Became much more sensitive to also the wants of others, not the needs necessarily, but the wants of others as well. There's like an opening of the perspective, and with the liberation, I mean, we spoke about like with the survival, I'm coming back to this for a second because these two go together. With the survival, the kind of energy that they had before you were in this collective, you know, moving from fear in order to control, to be able to do their kind of crossbreeding program, etc. Moving from fear and being guided from fear, you help them liberate from that kind of fear into a space of harmony, because that's what happened in their society. Their multi-species civilization became very harmonious because they had a lot to offer in general. You know, it was like an abundant place that they were living in, an even more abundant civilization that they were creating through this crossbreeding. So, you know, they found others to join them quite easily once they started to open up a bit more in that sense. And it was like much more harmonious and like less stress involved, I guess, to live in such a way where they knew that the others are there because they want to be there and not because, oh my God, in 5 hours their chemical balance in their body is going to change and I need to do this and this again. You know, it was almost like this before, like looking at the clock. Not that they had a clock in that sense, but you get what I mean. It was like, you know, that's also what their psychic senses were used for beforehand, by the way, of noticing these subtle changes in this chemical balance of the bodies of others. It's almost like they could smell the change and then they knew, okay, I need to take another action like that one in order to like trauma bond them to me. And that, like, all of that relaxed and there was a lot of harmony there. What else? When it comes to love, you learned a lot about the shadow side of love and like sensual energy, sexual energy. You learned a lot about this like shadow side of that love, and how much, I was going to say people, how much, I mean, it's true for humans as well, but how much beings in general want to hitch their wagon to someone else through essentially feigning love. I guess attachment would be another way to phrase that, how, yeah, like the dark side of attachments when it comes to love. The importance of harmony. Yeah, that's super interesting. Let me pull, because I feel like that's what you needed to know when it comes to this. Like, also, by the way, in this lifetime right now, I feel like you have a very keen sense when it comes to picking up on the kinds of intentions that others have when they go into relationships, also with you, by the way. Very, very keen awareness when it comes to this, and like picking up on all of these different intentions. All right, let me pull like a closing card because I feel called to. I shuffled off camera all the way already, by the way. I shuffled off camera already. Okay. For my beautiful pile number 3. So what's the closing message that we can get? What's the closing message? We got one. Wow. Okay. We have here. Loosen your grip. Coping mechanisms, density, addiction, and like God in. And we see 2 people here. I feel like reading this from the guidebook for you as well. Let me do that for a moment. We are cyclic beings, and Mother Earth teaches us how to be human every single day with the coming and going of the tides and the seasons. If you're clinging to anything, you're resisting the natural flow of who you are. The things we cling to are so often those we most need to let go of. The food, the substances, the relationship, the job, the people-pleasing. The things we cling to often cover up our most vulnerable space. The part we are most afraid of to leave empty. The part we guard and don't let grace into. But by keeping that space covered with something that doesn't serve us or clinging to it for fear of it not staying of its own accord. I'm going to read that one again because it's relevant. But by keeping that space covered with something that doesn't serve us or clinging to it for fear of it not staying on its own accord, we prevent ourselves from receiving the things that will. A Course in Miracles tells us, whatever we leave empty, grace will fill. And Buddha said, you can only lose what you cling to. Indeed, both are true. If this card appears, you're being called to find the courage to loosen your grip and give up control, to release your coping mechanisms and leave space for grace and God to enter, to surrender all that feels dense to the divine. Loosen your grip doesn't mean that what you're clinging to will go away. It may, or it might stay. But you can be sure that what is for you will find you, and you'll breathe easier knowing that you've shifted from relying on your own strength to surrendering to the grace of life. Starseed Soul Inquiry. What are you clinging to for fear of nothing coming to take its place? And that one sentence does not leave me alone, clinging to it for fear of it not staying of its own accord. That's exactly the shadow that we looked at in this reading. That's exactly the shadow energy that we saw in this collective. And like I said at the very beginning, you are part of starting this kind of ascension process. It doesn't mean that this ascension process has finished while you were there, because it didn't, but it started to move and shift. Perhaps after that one incarnation, you left that kind of energy place, but you didn't necessarily leave all of that shadow energy behind. Because again, when we are incarnating in a specific kind of collective or soul group, we are, of course, we're bringing our own energy into the mix, but we are also born in a physical body that is very much connected to the energy of that collective. So some aspects of the shadows that are present in this collective temporarily become our own. And just because at some point we'll leave that collective or we leave that body again doesn't mean that we leave all of those shadows behind. You know, sometimes we carry them with us over in other lifetimes. So a question that I would be curious, I mean, if you are willing to share with me, of course, would be if you had difficulties with control in relationships or like challenges, or if that was a topic that was relevant to you in this lifetime that you find yourself in, either being on the receiving end or on the end of asserting that kind of control over others. Because this could go both ways, because when you were there, you were understanding of both perspectives as well. But that's something that I see could have carried over from that lifetime, and why it's coming up in this reading for you now, because there's, that was like a clear message, and the others didn't get, pile 2 got a message as well, but not like that, I guess. Yeah. So, my dear pile number 3s, if you are experiencing some intense emotions at the present time after this reading, and you feel kind of, if you feel very emotional, I did leave a video down below for you where I guide you through through the process of releasing and processing your emotions by using EFT tapping. So if you are curious about that, you want to give that a go, either, today or in the next couple of days, whenever you feel like it. You can find it in the pinned comment down below. And connected to this topic of past lives, I will also record a Reiki video for you to help you process. If any of those are out already, the EFT video is already out. If the Reiki video is out already, you can find it down below. And in the upcoming weeks and maybe months, I'm also going to share some of my own past life memories, bit by bit, one by one. I'm going to share some of them. I don't really have a schedule for it, but if you're curious about my own, because it's good to read, but I think it might also be good for you to hear what kind of experiences I've had, because I don't really see a lot of people talking about that, aside from reading into others' energies. If you're curious about those, you're gonna find them on my channel in the next couple of months. Every now and then, one popping up. And that is all I have for you today. Let me know how this resonated in the comments below. I'd really love to read that. And that is all. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I hope I see you soon.